Alrighty. Hello everybody, how's it going? Let me, yeah, it's been a while, so I want to get this done, especially for you guys. We have a little bit of new stuff, spoilers, chapter 60, volume 12, Maiden Abyss Iceberg, layer 3, let's go. Riko dies outside of the abyss. We need to go through irrelevant information first, and the first thing that we need to go through is Juusou. Juusou are those born as Narahate, to put it bluntly. Mostly unknown due to Orth hoarding all this information about them and keeping it to themselves. Even white whistles are pretty much kept under wraps. To ensure the idea of their existence remains hidden, anyone born Juusou is immediately killed right at birth. Whether this is for sacrificial or religious reasons has yet to fully play out. The requirements needed to produce Juusou have not yet been determined as of yet either. It's pretty much implied at this point that it's tied into the curse of the 7th layer of some kind, as that information was quickly nipped at the bud and disposed of from Orth as well. Like the curse of the 7th layer and Juusou themselves, you know, they don't want the public to know at all. Bondrewd was also heavily experimenting with ways to produce Juusou, I think to use for easier access to the deeper layers, because, you know, if he wasn't affected by the curse, then he'd go anywhere, literally. And that Menya and all children of change, is what they're called, are in fact the closest to Juusou that Bondrewd has achieved. These are said by SRAJO to be, quote, likely something that was born mixed with an animal fetus, end quote. So we can also take away Juusou, also known as beast forms, that these animalistic bodies are an obvious trait. And we see this with the curses and blessings within the abyss. Now, Juusou are not what we would traditionally think of as Narahate or a hollow. Both I will be using interchangeably from here on out and like forever. Now, hollows like Midi versus like a regular hollow differ only from Midi's immortality. Now, blessed hollows are ones like Nanachi or when Bondrewd receives a blessing in Dawn of the Deep Soul. Even the Narahate found within Arubaru are different from blessed hollows as well. This is easily shown with Majikaja's remark on how Nanachi's body was given to them at the old ritual site, and that it must have been a very strong desire to form such a body. There are some similarities though that just are calling to be compared to each other. Now what I'm talking about is the fact that Nanachi received the blessing, and with it a body of her soul's deepest desires. All with her nice smelling fur and fluffy fur that almost attracts children to her, to the point that we see every kid's first response to seeing Nanachi is wanting to come and cuddle her. This is aligned with Arubaru's transformation of its citizens to give them a body most tailored to their greatest desire as well. Although this is a weaker variation that we see, it is a similar type of ascension that we see with Blessed Narahate. Now this is just due to the village's origin being of the wish-granting eggs and not an actual mechanic of the abyss, but clearly it's tied together, in my opinion, and Arubaru is vital to understanding the way the abyss and this system works, I think. Especially because Arubaru does such a similar thing in such a different way that we know of so far. Is it the violent origin of the village itself that malformed the inhabitants, or are they missing a key piece to the puzzle for a complete ascension, or to, you know, receiving the blessing? So, entry 1, Riko dies outside of the abyss. This is about the dangling key information we receive from Ozen about the truth of Riko and her birth. We've covered this in previous layers, and now the fact that Riko isn't falling apart right now or deathly sick, we can assume for the moment that she's good to go, but that a possibility for Riko to die prematurely due to her being brought back by the curse-repelling vessel is still a possibility. The curse-warding vessel has obviously affected her as she was brought back by it, but that she also has that homesickness for the abyss that most raiders have. Riko's is different because the moment that she could even move, she was heading toward the center of the abyss. Now, granted, this is an association with all things that come out of the box, but it's still important nonetheless. And kind of like how Kiyu, being further away from the abyss, cured his symptoms of the birthday death disease, Riko, being born of the abyss, would die the farther away, or become crippled the farther away she gets from the bottom of the abyss, or the central shaft. Okay, so it gets really interesting when we start looking at theories of the 7th layer, or the ending to this series as a whole. Now, there's a theory I've seen that goes on to think the 7th layer is the entrance to the other side, or that it kind of spits you back out when entering that threshold of the 8th layer. This comes from the scene of Dremo and his crew finding the boat with the suffering bodies and the catatonic old man in the back with the star compass. If we take this theory and add it onto this entry's point specifically, when we figure out what's happening when everyone is filled with melancholy, because I seriously doubt Tsukushi is gonna make this a fully happy ending, and we're off to saying our goodbyes, we might have to say goodbye to Riko for good. So Riko was born inside the abyss as stillborn, okay? Got brought back to life and was sent to Orth to live a normal life. With the ailment of headaches without seeing through crystal lenses, not a big deal, right? We also learn, though rarely, that Juusou are born as Narahate. Obviously, we don't have any extra information to go off of, but the questions still remain. What does that consist of? Is it only babies conceived in the abyss, or getting affected by the curse while pregnant? When was Riko conceived? Why is Riko so special in that she is, quote, normal when she's born in the abyss? Tied to the abyss since birth. Riko definitely has a special connection to the abyss, like nobody else seems to have. And if we think about it some more, it kind of makes sense. The abyss took her life, which in turn affects everybody else around her. She gets revived, and in return is truly connected to the abyss on a subconscious level, and is always destined to change it. Now again, we don't really have a bunch of info to go on regarding Juusou and those mechanics because they're so new. Entry 2, Sherumi and Menae are the dolls. So it's like obvious, but I'm not gonna just take this out, and instead, I'm gonna use this as a branching off point to talk about some theories and what we could infer about these guys, and this one is going to be a long one. So to start off, Sherumi and Menae have popped up in the pictures here and there, especially in the last layer I showed them off, and they are the pair of twins that we see in Volume 6, going over the distant characters, also known as beyond glyphs, which are simply just ideographs and apparently practically unlimited in characters and variations. This type of language, if it's still confusing you, is like Uruburu's language and maybe even exactly the language they speak. As we can see the twins talk about the translation of Uruburu in their next outing and how they seem to not have any idea what it could mean. But we've seen what it means. 50% village, 40% cradle, and 10% mother. And this is not to be confused with netherglyphs, which is the most blunt and accurate decoding of beyond glyphs, which in turn became the alphabet of Orth. Now, we see the twins again in a rather unfortunate situation, as they are stuck in a dark room or a cave or something, or perhaps some kind of vessel. Now, Menae asks her sister's corpse how nice it would be to go back to the museum, how nice it would be if the unmovable sovereign would come back. And the next thing you know, their names are being yelled at by SRAJO all the way down in the 6th layer. And then we see them, fluffy and animalistic to say the least. Oh, and yeah, missing all of their extremities, and now they're wearing pink and black plaid skirts, but I'll go with it, okay? So clearly these twins have suffered an unfortunate fate, an awful fate, excruciating fate. And I think we can assume that their souls were transferred to a body like that, which with all of the markings and just the general appearance of them, and our conversations earlier about prototype relics, sparks theories like, someone is trying to replicate Reagan Clawbot. Perhaps something went just perfectly for those two and not the twins. Me, personally, I'm gonna always be behind that fence, man, because I've been saying it since my first video. The White Whistles know something. There is no way SRAJO just happens to have the twins that were connected to Ozen, in a very cryptic way, mind you, and then died right after Ozen starts talking all suspicious. Now, I don't think they're necessarily working together. That would be easily debunked. But clearly, no one wants to spill the freaking beans here, man. Jiro didn't even want to tell Riko the truth about everything he knew. And that's basically his little sister, right? He knew her since he was a little kid. But it's definitely curious to say the least. And I'm completely ready to see what Tsukushi has planned. So, guess what? The newest chapter just completely blew away everything. So chapter 66, we get a crazy revelation to the world building of Maiden Abyss, the lore of Maiden Abyss. Let me just fanboy right now. This is why I love Maiden Abyss. The deep lore and world building with actual connections to small details that feel rewarding and hype as fuck when we get a lore dump like this. So we learn exactly how rare Sherumi and Menae are right away from Ozen, when she asks Juusou if he's ever met a pair of twins before. And after responding that he never has, but he did hear whispers about fraternal twins in the Northern District, and just how rare they really are, Ozen makes this incredibly clear. Quote, in Orth, there either is or isn't a pair of twins every 30 years. When compared to other lands, it is awfully hard for them to be born. In this island of Orth, where it's so hard for twins to be born. Aside from those children from the Northern District, there was this other pair of twins in this wharf quarter. Their names are Sherumi and Menae. Juusou then responds quite reasonably and asks, quote, wasn't that also the name of the Northern District twins? End quote. Ozen then shows some more skeletons and lets him know straight up, quote, that's what they're all called. Twins born in Orth for some reason all end up having the same name, all for different reasons. Whether they took some letters from their parents' names, just came to them when they saw their faces, or they put a twist on a proverb from overseas. Whatever the reason, they end up, quote, this is in parentheses, in quotations, all with the same name. Sherumi and Menae are mentioned in the original, according to some people, erased names, or so they say. It really does have a touch of the occult, end quote. When Juusou asks Ozen if that's the reason they are in the wharf quarter, she just says it's a place of relation to them. The site of an accident, I guess. After completely crushing this poor dude's door and being accused of a thief of Orth, Ozen calls this guy, quote, the sole survivor of the curse that's spilling onto here, end quote. So there is a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to take this phrase by phrase with you guys. And right off the bat, we get some curious details. Juusou says, quote, I did hear there was a pair of brother and sister twins in the Northern District, end quote. So unless you can be reborn Juusou, then the twins we see up in the museum and dying have to be the Northern twins because they're obviously not there, and the amputated survivor of the curse is somehow in relation to the twins. So again, unless the same pair of twins died and got brought back Juusou, I'm assuming they were born, kept hidden, and when the time was right, they were sent into the abyss. SRAJO has her own stakes in the adventure to the bottom with the twins, and knowing about the Shrine Maiden could easily convince kids to go down with her. I mean, she already did with Riko Squad, and a lot of you guys already think she's a good guy. So, quote, in Orth, there either is or isn't a single pair of twins every 30 years. When compared to other lands, it is awfully hard for them to be born, end quote. Okay, so this section I think is a little weird because what we know from Hablog in Volume 2 is rumors of Ozen's strength and legendary status have been talked about for a full 50 years Orth time, and that's not counting the remaining years needed to achieve the status of White Whistle and how long she's been down in the Abyss, the accumulated time she's spent down within the Abyss. How old is she exactly? How old is Ozen? She not only knows about the 30-year cycle, which could be possible within like a normal human's lifetime, but to find a pattern within something takes more than 2 times, 3 times. And yeah, she could just be like, you know, another 60 years older or whatever, and it's not that crazy. But that's not the point. The point is she's suspicious, okay? She doesn't even seem all that shocked the fact that the curse is spilling upward in the first place. She's literally gone this whole time doing her own thing, going down into the depths for her own reasons, okay? And it happens to be connected to Sherumi and Menae in some way, as that's the last we see them in their human bodies. And Hablog, when finding the excavation site, says something about Ozen being out. Like, when she gets back, let her know. Like, we need her right away. And also, we don't really know the timeline for all that too well, so, you know, I could just be talking out of my ass, but, I'm gonna go through the quotes. Quote, aside from those children from the Northern District, there's this other pair of twins in this wharf quarter. Their names are Sherumi and Menae, end quote. Now, from this we can infer, like I said, unless, you die and get reborn Juusou, which is a possibility, I am not knocking that, but to me, it makes more sense like this in my head. We see one pair of twins in the museum going over the Netherglyphs, okay? Then we see a pair of twins talking about Ozen and the museum, and Ozen is now in the Wharf District, perhaps looking for them, or the other set of twins. Now, she could have been to the wharf before all this and just kept it hidden until showing Juusou. What we also don't know what they talked about or what the hell Ozen was talking about when asking Malrook to, quote, prepare 2 of hers or two of mine. Except the obvious glasses for the alcohol that she was drinking. But, like, what was she drinking? Why is the next page literally about Sherumi and Menae in that situation? Like, I don't know, it's just odd. Next section, quote, that's what they're all called. Twins born in Orth, for some reason, all end up having that same name. All for different reasons, whether they took some letters from their parents' names, just came to them when they saw their faces, or they put a twist on a proverb from overseas. Whatever the reason, they end up all with the same name. Sherumi and Menae are mentioned in the original, according to some people. Erased names, or so they say. Really does have a touch of the occult. End quote. Okay, guys, so there's quite a lot to unpack in this quote alone. The beginning is pretty obvious. They're all called Sherumi and Menae for some reason. But she's quoting all within the same name. It's like she herself is quoting something, like a prophecy, or part of a song, or part of a hymn. This is part of the original collections, like Ozen has been saying. We can infer that these two are a lot more important than they appear to be. She says erase names, or so they say, and that's just all sorts of cryptic, okay? Erased from what? Erased from Orth? The entire culture surrounding the Abyss? Forgotten within the original? What? Like, if there's always twins named that, and Ozen knows it, how are they forgotten? Now, perhaps Ozen is more on the dot than she seems, and it is something occult, something we can't really understand. But I don't know, man. The twins are super weird and mysterious, and they say they're Juusou, but then thought Reg was like them, so they've never seen anybody like him before. And if the Golden City is actually inhabited by people like Reg, then the actual birth of the reincarnated does not take place within the 7th layer, or that the Golden City is like in 8th layer or whatever like that. But I don't know, man. We have a discussion about the twins because that's just crazy. So now we're moving on to entry 3, White Whistles, and we need to go through some relevant information here. And it's pretty much just going over the White Whistles specifically. So if you already know them or you're not interested or whatever, then you can go ahead and skip. The remaining ones we need to talk about are LYZA, SRAJO, and Wakuna. And we're gonna start off with LYZA, the Sovereign of Annihilation. Kind of already thought I went over her, but I guess I didn't. She's one of the more mysterious White Whistles, just because we don't really know a lot about her. And not because of personality, but because of motive. And to explain that, we have to go back to Ozen. Much like all other children of Orth, LYZA was orphaned, her parents never being mentioned ever, and she took off for the Belshara orphanage to follow her calling within the Abyss. As a Red Whistle, LYZA would adamantly return to Ozen seeking mentorship, and after a few beatings, it would spark something of a conversation. LYZA confesses to Ozen that her hair, the scars on her head, are nothing but proof of her resolve as a cave raider, and more importantly, the sacrifices needed to venture to become a White Whistle. Appreciative of such a different outlook than her own, Ozen would take LYZA under her wing and would soon see her skills and passion as a cave raider. Now, quickly excelling through the ranks that are set up to distinguish the legends from the hopeful, receiving the rank of Black Whistle by her teens, earning her White Whistle would become a matter of when and not if. Sometime into LYZA's young adulthood, a cave raider by the name of Doni would sacrifice himself for LYZA and become her White Whistle that she now carries. Proving herself one of the best, she would be instructed to form a team alongside Ozen and venture into the Abyss's 4th layer to retrieve a special grade relic, the Unheard Bell. She would later meet the man she would end up marrying, Torka. The expedition was a 10-month-long commitment to the Abyss, and among the group she had picked for the expedition, most would end up dying, including Torka, presumably to the strains of Ascending, or foreign cave raiders, trying to steal the Unheard Bell. Now, this very obviously sent LYZA near the edge, and having found the bell, she'd also given birth to Riko, as stillborn. Depressed and just wanting to be alone through all of this, she'd lost almost everyone. Even her daughter was not safe from the Abyss. Ozen being annoyed that such a situation was sprung on her, and that LYZA's energy and passion has totally been drained due to the situation. She'd stick the corpse of Riko into the curse-repelling vessel, only to soon hear crying coming from within. The choice to LYZA was clear and set in stone. They had to bring Riko up. They had to save her daughter. So, with the help of the only other survivors of the 4th layer's Bell team, they made their way back up to Orth with the only prize to show for it being Riko. 2 years would pass after the Bell expedition, and LYZA would do everything she could to hide the existence and origin of Riko to protect her. At just 2 years old, LYZA would confide in Ozen that she would be leaving behind Orth and the life that she's built up for herself, for her influence to not sway Riko into pursuing a passion that she's merely imitating, and to let Riko know of her miraculous survival and all of the tiny things needed to happen to make sure that she's here. An unknown time would pass, and she would delve into the depths 6th layer and record a bestiary / field guide of sorts, and running into Clawbot near the entrance to the 7th layer, having later come into contact with Reg, and presumably having him put her items, Blaze Reap, the pendant, and the sealed letter, into a gravestone for Orth to send back up. As of right now, we have no clues or anything solid to confirm LYZA is dead or alive. Personally, I've always thought that she was dead, or at least not in her own body. She doesn't need Doni, she doesn't need Blaze Reap, her main weapon that she's been using this whole time. Now, granted, it was getting busted, but perhaps that was after said encounter with Clawbot and, meeting Reg and then setting it up. I don't know. This is why you see some theories about LYZA being Clawbot or Reg carrying up LYZA's soul for whatever reason. Also, I really do think it's heavy foreshadowing on the introduction of LYZA, in fact, not of herself as we know her, but as a monstrous, almost suffering beast of some kind that we see, like, in the Resurrection Festival. I don't know. I thought the first time I saw it, it was really strange, and yeah, the rest is, played out. Her notes and whistle get sent to Riko and Orth, Blaze Reap getting handed to Ozen, and now we wait for the newest chapter. Relevant information continued. SRAJO, the Sovereign of Mystery. On to our last few white whistles here, and this time we start with SRAJO, the Sovereign of Mystery, the captain of an exclusively Juusou team called Hail Hex, down in the 6th layer. SRAJO, like her title suggests, is renowned for her mystery and secrets. She is known to wear a plague doctor-like mask and attire that constantly covers up her body and face, only ever seeing that she is even a woman by the newest chapters. The only things that we can be sure of, or at least if we take her by her word, is that she gathered her team of Juusou, and one of them had run off to the 7th layer to try to find the Shrine Maiden, in which Hail Hex has only one way to go down: Edo Front. SRAJO and her team arrive at Edo Front with quite a welcoming committee waiting for them, to say the least. Bondrewd and his Umber Hands. Even more though, the burial clothes shrouds are there. Umber Hands that wear white coats as a rank of sorts. These guys are equipped with very powerful relics, and for example, Gallus, the guy in the flower field, is an example. Because of this, Yadamar urges against getting aggressive towards them. Bondrewd mocks, telling SRAJO that he has no problem with them passing through at all, but that she has to go through the proper formalities. SRAJO brushes it off, instantly asking him if anyone truly does that. And Hail Hex opens up and tells Bondrewd straight out that they're looking to pass through the 6th layer because of their team going down to, find the Shrine Maiden. Bondrewd then proceeds to press SRAJO and tells her that she is indeed allowed to pass through without proper customs, but that the rest of Hail Hex, being composed of Juusou, has to stay behind. SRAJO, with her rebellious attitude and probably sees the nefarious actions of Bondrewd, completely disregards him and tells her team to get ready to charge. And next thing you know, we see him testing Reg and Riko gang, and then they team up, and then they go down in the 7th layer, and now we wait for the newest chapters. Relevant information, we gotta go through Wakuna the Chosen, the Sovereign of Guidance, really quick. Wakuna the Chosen, the Sovereign of Guidance. So, next to the other distant white whistles we see when introduced to the Sovereigns, Wakuna is the most enigmatic of all the white whistles, with the title of the Chosen as well as his sovereign title of Guidance. Like I said before, there is very little that we know or can even speculate about Wakuna. We get some comments about where he is and his age and gender from Bondrewd when talking to Nanachi about the other Sovereigns, saying, quote, "It seems the Sovereign of Guidance, who is getting on in his years, used a personal relic to invade the 6th layer, also without sending notice, of course," end quote. So this is a topic that is kind of just brushed off, or at least Sakushi put a tiny, like, kindling for a specific idea that he's trying to hint at us, or even spell out later on. But we could take some pretty serious inferences based on his remark alone. Wakuna was also said to have invaded the 6th layer with his own personal relic, which would be cause to think it's some kind of sub or submersible, given that the 5th layer, Sea of Corpses, is quite literally an ocean you'd have to swim down into, or use Edo Front or the Nest, and we have to assume it's at least one of these. Wakuna's white whistle is also shaped like a whale, further giving credence to a sub-theory, or like a whale, like a friend or something. His title of Sovereign of Guidance is also rather strange. Now, if he is one of the oldest white whistles of this 2,000-year cycle, or hell, maybe even one before, he has to have gained more esoteric knowledge about the Abyss and its workings, perhaps even guiding souls to the bottom, or maybe even back up. Wakuna is a curious case, especially when we look at where the Star Compass was originally found by Guillermo and the other crew on the boat, one burning on the inside, one just splayed open, still breathing. Some think this is cause to assume the Abyss has an exit, so to speak. And if you get to that exit without stealing something, or perhaps not caving into the desire you've used to push through your journey, you'll be spared. And that Wakuna knows about these inner workings of the Abyss, hence being known as the Chosen One. I mean, this guy, we could sit all day and speculate. He's pretty cool, really mysterious, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see him at least a little bit in the newest volumes. Okay, entry 3, White Whistles. Okay, so this entry is going to be going in depth about White Whistles, the rank, the origins, powers. To start off, every Delver of Orth is ranked by experience and skill, using a whistle color system to appropriately designate cave raiders to specific layers. The very first, and truthfully blissfully ignorant to the Abyss and its true nature, the Bell rank is just a token of commitment. Merely studying to become a Delver, a sense of pride that you have your heart set on the Abyss. The next rank being the Red Whistle rank, allowing newly graduated Bells to go down into the first layer. A successful trip down will reward them a Red Whistle, and as novice children are usually the ones to obtain this rank. Anything lower than 550 meters will be looked at as rebellious behavior of a Red Whistle, and Orth will send a search party to come rescue you. If one reaches the second layer of 1,350 meters, this will be seen as nothing but suicide, and all parties will be called off, not to be met with a search party. Now, the second layer is for Blue Whistles and above. Old enough to take the Abyss's deeper strains and fauna, but not experienced enough to really go into the bowels of the third, or God forbid, the fourth layer. They are considerably skilled and are usually obtained around 15 years of age, and can hold themselves in the tamer parts of the depths. Now, the next rank would be Moon Whistles, and these guys are essentially teachers. Moon Whistles are able to venture down into the depths' third and fourth layers, so experienced by this point, they are the ones to take up the lives of future cave raiders and help mold them to further advance their society. Adept and experienced from years and years of cave raiding, Black Whistles are those looked up on from the youngest of raiders. As a Black Whistle is obtainable throughout one's life, able to delve down into the 4th and 5th layers, most Black Whistles are used in elite teams with White Whistle leaders for large expeditions or valuable info and relics. In order for one to receive such a rank, another Black Whistle must recommend you, and as such, it is not just given to anybody. And finally, the White Whistles. Now, White Whistles are a symbol of prestige in the Abyss. With the power to unlock the true potential of a certain grade of relic, the raw materials used to create a White Whistle as known as your worth or the life reverberating stone. Now, these precious materials are made by a human sacrifice or death while having the absolute resolve to sacrifice everything for an intended user. As such, these stones are unique in that a specific life pattern is created with it, and only the intended user matches up to that pattern and will be the only one able to use their specific White Whistle. Now, the weird conversations about them begin, as one of the biggest mysteries surrounding them, or at least surrounding some of the things, are the fact that only some of the Delvers Guild up in Orth is aware of the place that life reverberating stones are carved into actual White Whistles, and it's rumored to not even be in Orth at all, but literally in the Abyss. This is caused to think the place is Erubaru, and the instrument carver dude is kind of plausible, as we've seen Bondrewd go down there one time, and we're also told that Bondrewd would go down often to trade. Now, Bondrewd did have his white whistle the first time we see him in the flashback of Baloth, and we do know from Riko and the hollow from Ganja's descent that the altar thing, the elevator used to descend the Sea of Corpses, doesn't necessarily have to be activated by blowing into a white whistle specifically. So the location of the carver of life reverberating stones very well could be Arubaru and the village. It did seem very familiar with them, the village as a whole, and the title of a white whistle, or at least what it means for a Netherworld to have one. These stones are carved into different shapes and figures that correspond with the sovereign it belongs to. Later on in the manga, in season 2 of the anime, we see the fruition of Bondrewd's quote, the timbre of the instrument created will have the power to draw out the true purpose that's hidden within relics. Now, this is really cool because at first we thought, okay, so just Albods, right? Reg was enhanced by the whistle, makes sense. But as seen in the more recent chapters of the manga, so was Nishigora. I mean, either Juusou and Albods, like Rig, are one and the same, or at least closely related enough for the white whistle to enhance Juusou like that. Or some of what we've been told hasn't been completely truthful, which is very possible, as we've seen Orth itself is very stingy about whatever secrets it does choose to hoard. Because I think Orth is in on it. I've been saying this since the start. Whatever's happening, Orth is aware, or at least aware enough to realize what's going on, just not how to stop it, or the true origin, or anything like that. Also with Ozen, while truthful, we've seen hold back information as well. I think it is the biggest thing for white whistles themselves, as especially SRAJO right now is being very withholding of information. Granted, she is giving a lot more than others, but that's not saying much at all now that I think about it, as even people supposedly very close to Riko, in fact, do not tell her very important information about her birth, or even hoblog about Ozen to Reg and Riko before sending them off. I mean, it's weird. A couple more things I want to keep bringing up is the sliver of a white whistle we get in the start of the series of the manga. When being introduced to their silhouettes, right in the left-hand corner is a white whistle, with the top of it kind of sharing similarities with Riko's white whistle, as well as a swirl in the middle, which is an aesthetic choice we've been seeing a lot more recently regarding the 7th layer, as well as the white whistle we see when Ganja descends into the 6th layer. Just a little side note though, Nishigora comments on Riko's white whistle and how it's different, or at least it's the only one we see with black still on it. Regarding its shape, it kind of looks like the twins with like the little ears and stuff. Maybe I'm just going crazy now, but it is strange to say the least. But that's pretty much it. Pretty important. Definitely need more information to really complete the picture here, but that's most things here going on in Maiden Abyss. Yeah, so I cut my hair. Just try to ignore it. Okay, so we're gonna move straight on for entry 4, and the next 3 entries are not gonna have relevant information. Entry 4, Relic Variation. Now, this is just a reference to the drastic variation that we see in relics all throughout the Abyss. Now, the biggest thing I wanted to bring up personally was the fact that there are cases of organic and inorganic relics. Artifacts like the Princess Bosom and Zoaholic are organic in some way, or at least it looks like it's organic. Anyway, I think it's an important topic to look at, this specifically, because I think it relates to the Abyss on like a fundamental level. Now, back when I didn't know what the hell was going on in this series, and just watching it just because I love the world that was being presented, I had a thought, and I see a lot of people think this on the Reddit, like people who are just getting into it or something, they'll make a post about it like, oh, this is a good idea, and it is a good idea. I just think it's deeper. Now, in the common theory that I'm seeing is the one of souls, or, you know, like people or something being relics. And if we look at all the relics, we can see huge differences, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but if these are indeed made from the Golden City, then they'd have to see whatever it is they make as useful. Otherwise, it'd be pointless, right? And this is assuming that the Golden City is the one that has produced all these relics. Like I said, it's obviously deeper than that, but it's just speculation to build off of. Now, in some cases, like the Sun Spheres or Blaze Reap, it has its obvious uses, right? But what about something like the Princess Bosom? Organic, squishy, and really no obvious use beyond its appearances. And then we have actual tools that could make a civilization or country thrive. An endless fountain of water, a liquid said to immortalize anyone who drinks from its container, a superheated laser capable of disintegrating anything it comes into contact with. I mean, it literally rewrites the rules of the Abyss. Imagine what that could do for a country in war or something. And now the question after this is obviously, why though? I don't know. It's not too strange to speculate. This, and along with a handful of other things, are like the biggest mysteries in my mind. Now, this can go even deeper when we look at special grade relics and white whistles as a relic itself. Now, most of these special grade relics have uses that make somebody a god, pretty much. But white whistles have a unique all-purpose function to enhance a certain grade of relics. And this is where the tie-in to the theory of people being relics comes in. Right now, we are seeing connections between Albods like Reg and Juusou specifically. And how even though both are wildly different, at least, you know, from what we know so far, what we can physically see, they both are affected by the sound of a white whistle. And as we know, white whistles are the soul and, you know, like the consciousness incarnate. And we can see this in Prushka when talking to Riko after turning into a life reverberating stone. And of course, Fapto, who is able to completely communicate with the souls inside of a white whistle. Now, clearly there is some kind of reincarnation happening within the Abyss. How and when and like the actual specifics are going to be unknown, I think, for a while. But Reg is considered the highest grade of relic in Albod, a treasure, a supreme treasure of the Netherworld. And that the mere knowledge, like Ozin tells us, that the mere knowledge of Albods being real and not just like a rumor would have catastrophic effects on the spiritual and philosophical beliefs that keep the people of Orth going. And the people who believe in the Abyss as a deity, faithful. Now, a lot of people use this to further theorize that souls reincarnate into relics itself, and that is pretty much the complete tie-in from the previous theory that we brought up all the way in the beginning. I don't think it's that far-fetched of an idea. Like I said, I just think it might be a lot more complex than we could have thought. So we're going to move on to entry 5, 8th layer. So this is a really neat topic to go into because as we can see on the map of the Abyss, the current map of the Abyss, there is no 8th layer. It's all just speculation, about the 8th layer. I think we could assume that it is either non-existent or that it is so special and it is, you know, we just talked about it, the complete collapse of their spiritual beliefs, their philosophical beliefs that keep them going as people. But if we look at the current map of the Abyss, I think it's kind of weird. We can see a huge drop-off of what just might be the entrance to the Golden City itself. It's kind of weird. It's like the Great Fall. It's just one flat, it looks like just one flat thing. Granted, it could be fleshy, so you could just like grab on it and like climb down, but I guess we'll see, right? Now, this city has been speculated to be inhabited with citizens all similar to Reg and Clawbot. As Voiko, we see Voiko comments on Reg's appearance when seeing him for the first time, and also quotes from Irumui saying they imitate the markings of the true residents. But if we take this, you know, if we take this speculation all the way as far as we can, we can speculate that this Golden City is a super advanced city. It's capable of surviving the Abyss's brutality further past the 7th layer, as well as adapting to the nature of a speculative 8th layer. And this is all assuming that the Golden City isn't located in the 7th layer that Riko Gang and the SRAJO crew are in right now, which is a possibility. I just think that the 7th layer might be some harsh environment to get through, as the name Final Maelstrom suggests. And in order to, you know, get to that final step, to that final stage, you need to be able, you know, to show your strength, or you need to be able to give something up or something to enter and be accepted within the Golden City. I've also had a similar theory near the start of the 2nd season, but not sure if it lines up so much nowadays. But thinking of the Abyss as like a bank of souls type of deal, or maybe even like a tree of life thing. But we do see, okay, and then the reason I thought about that is because we do see that reincarnation is 100% a thing in Maiden Abyss, and that value and even the names of people are tied to specific souls. So, you know, Reg being called Reg no matter what, isn't as strange as we think about it, especially if LYZA was in the 7th layer and she knew all the secrets as a White Whistle. But we can go even deeper with another party perhaps working underneath everybody and using special grade relics to make the fairy tale a reality, just as Hoblog had suggested right before that in the Delvers Guild. Now, in the Forward Expedition party, they claim that there are large storage vessels. For what? We're not 100% sure. And what looks to me to be funeral nameplates stuck into the ceiling of this cave, all waiting to be cycled back through the Bank of Souls. And then, of course, we see the nest shape. I know it's not actually the nest, or at least it's not confirmed to be the nest, but it's the only thing I can call it right now. The shape of the abyss, maybe? Like, I don't know. We'll talk about that further, though, like shapes and stuff. Really important to the abyss. But we see this swirls, and certain patterns are intrinsically tied to the abyss itself. We could speculate and think of the first half of this nest shape as one abyss. So with the shape of that, of the top half, and then the bottom half going outwards instead of inwards, there's speculation that the bottom of the abyss is just an entry point to the other side of another abyss. Or, you know, like sending you out to the other side, out in the ocean maybe. And this is brought up because of really no explanation so far as to what really happened to the Broke crew who died in impossible ways that the Star Compass was found in. Sorry, that's just my cat. Or, I really like this, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was on the subreddit, that the Golden City is just a rumor to get only the most skilled delvers to go down and get eaten at the very bottom. That all the accumulation and the accumulated value of all these, like, super powerful, determined, you know, longing for the abyss itself only, like, that's all they want is the abyss. Perhaps that accumulation, you know, creates a new layer, or, you know, whatever speculative idea is headcanon in your head. But man, it just hooks you in, man. Like, you want to know so bad, but at the same, it's like Eldritch, right? It's like, you want to know, but I don't think we can comprehend it, you know? I don't think it's gonna be... I don't know, like I said before, I don't want to get my hopes up and, like, get them shot down, because I know my expectations are going to be a lot different from what the actual execution is. But that is what we have to say about the 8th layer. On to the next entry. Entry 6. Gears Maiden Universe. Basically, what the Gears Maiden Universe is, it's a short story accompanied with some very well done illustrations that you will clearly see sparks of inspiration for Tsukushi and the ideas in his mind that helped shape Maiden Abyss as we know it today. There's some really clear concepts that I could tell he was running through his head, with souls, or at the very least, the memories of people being carried on through beings, cultural figures in their society. And the biggest example of this is shown with these giant cemeteries known as warlows. And these guys are really cool because they are literally carrying on their back the burden of remembrance. And this burden takes a physical shape as gravestones on their backs. Now, we even learn that these headstones are not, in fact, designated for a single individual like we would traditionally think, but that each of these stones represent an entire village or town of people. Entire villages now lost to the past. There also, in the lore, there's also a giant monster of legend, a saw monster, said to cause the decimation of anything in its wake, locked away deep in a forest of curses and tricks. Now, there are diminishing returns when venturing further into the forest, as you'll find your senses of touch, hearing, vertigo slowly disconnect from yourself, kind of like how the 5th layer's curse kind of like ego death. The main story follows a strikingly similar special young girl with the fate to change the world around her. Found in a small village with a horn and a tail and the ability to heal from what seems to be anything, scrapes, bruises, cuts, broken bones, all of it. Which is pretty cool, and perhaps, it's kind of a stretch, perhaps the first kind of inkling an idea toward Juusou and this new beast form we're seeing in the newest chapters. By the end of the story, Jima makes an unexpected ally and protects her home village from ogres, later using her abilities and newfound friend to help others. And there's another small chapter after this, if this piques your interest. And if you do choose to look further into it, you will see a lot more inspiration here to the animals around the world, to the interference units, to characters, and even themes. It's pretty much all there. It's really amazing to look at. You should look out his colored work. I'm sure a lot of you have. I mean, we're all pretty like huge fans of the series. If you're sitting here watching this, I assume that you've at least seen it, but I'll put a picture of his colored work right here, his colored illustrations, really amazing stuff. And I think I read somewhere also that he was colorblind. I could be just pulling it out my ass, but yeah, kind of cool. Okay, so we're gonna move on to entry 7 now. Entry 7, Orth Has Evacuated. Okay, so this is pretty much confirmed, or at least heavily alluded to, by Topaste and Kravagli before talking about leaving through the nest in volume 11, chapter 63. They have a conversation where she says that the rest of Orth is on this new big deal expedition that's happening. And obviously, there are residents like Laffy who are indeed not cave raiders, so we could take, you know, the rest of Orth refers only to just cave raiders. And this is further backed up by the ending of season 1, where we see Nat and Shiggy finding Riko Gang's mail balloon up in the first layer where Riko found Rake. We see them solemnly walk back toward Orth with thousands and thousands of eternal fortune petals drifting in the wind around them, and all through the city. Now, why would Nat and Shiggy still be around if they saw how bad it was for Kiyu, or even Jiro if he saw how bad it was for Kiyu? I don't know why he wouldn't bring them to Mio. I don't know. I mean, this could easily be brushed off as their birthdays have already passed, so they don't have to worry about it for like a whole nother year. But another thing to note is Kravagli and Topaste talking about how almost all of Orth is on this special expedition. Now, I have no clue if this special expedition they're referring to is the forward expedition party that we see literally the page right after, but maybe the expedition is to bring people down into the abyss. We do know that the curse is seeping into Orth itself, and if all this is happening roughly at the same time Riko Gang is doing their thing down in the abyss, and, you know, they're not randomly being affected by the curse while delving downward, I think it's safe to assume if citizens of Orth would be able to dive to the first or second layer, that they would be able to push off whatever's happening up in Orth, at least for a little bit longer. Obviously, it's something bigger, and there's a lot more pieces that I'm not really connecting, but that's why you guys are here. Because you guys are really helpful. Still, I'm really excited for it. I don't get my hopes up every month for a release. I'm just gonna wait for it to happen one day, and, you know, it'll be a pleasant surprise. But still, I'm super excited for it. I'm trying to make this YouTube thing fit. Life is kind of just kicking my ass right now. But, yeah, I mean, I'm just having fun with it. The upload times are pretty bad, but, yeah, I'm really just glad to have the small community that I have, and I really appreciate you guys, sticking around, through all the BS. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.